I think.
What was the last show you directed?
Messenger, Wendy Lill's new play Messenger, premiere last fall at Eastern Front. And it's a very exciting play about, it's based on Enemy of the People, which of course is really having a revival these days for good reason. And it's basically a retelling of that in around 1990 under the Mulroney government, when Canada had an opportunity to be a world leader. And then it all just came crashing down, as it may this time do. But, you know, there's this, everything looks so good, and then reality and oil prices and jobs and all those things come in. So it's basically that story retold in that scenario. And
when you work with Wendy on that play, do you dramaturge it, or does Wendy come up with the final draft, or do you work
Wendy's the
together?
playwright, but I work very closely with her on it. So I guess I'm like we have a very, I think dramaturgy is one of those words that doesn't mean anything. It's about the relationship you have with the playwright. So she uses me as a sounding board. I give her feedback. She writes the play. I don't write the play, but I give her feedback on whether I think a scene is working, or whether something might be brought out more, or whether something's repeated too often, or I'm her sounding board, I'm her midwife, or whatever. And we have a very good relationship. I find that it really is about the relationship that you have, rather than something you take out of a bag, or this is how I do dramaturgy, right? You might need very different kinds of questions than somebody else, and it's all about having a good relationship that you just, it's a trusted professional relationship where you can you can grow.
And when you direct a show like Wendy's show, you want to cast local, you want to cast national, you want to cast appropriate, you want to cast colorblind cast. Do these things matter to you?
Well, absolutely. But in Nova Scotia, in Halifax, of course, we have a much more limited pool. This is one of the downsides of being in a smaller place, is you really don't have the pool that you have here or in Vancouver, which is amazing. We always would want to cast locally. If the good people are there, then we will always do that, because part of why I believe very strongly that if you want to keep your community, you better hire them. Otherwise, they're not going to be there. So we were very fortunate. We had Burgundy Code, Jeff Schwager, and Hugh Thomson. Do you know Hugh Thomson? He's fabulous.
He's fabulous.
Yeah, he's one of the best actors in this country.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
He underrates himself,
oh, yeah.
and we underrate him.
I've always believed that. He started Messenger. I've worked with Hugh. I almost can't stop working with Hugh because he's so good. He was in Refuge, he was in Messenger, and he was in Solved by Walking, the Catherine Banks play that I did the year before, that won the Governor General's Award. So yeah, I have huge respect for Hugh, and he's just so good. Anyway.
There's something about casting in the community too
Yep.
that actually generates a different kind of energy
Yep.
for that theatre event in the community. And you know, we've all been through this for the decades, but you
Yep.
watch the shows that Mirvish brings in with a bit like the reflexes from the 40s and 50s, or so-and-so is coming in from
Yeah.
New York, or so-and-so is coming in from London. And the play sits within the community in a very different way
Sure.
than if it's actually the community
That's
speaking
right.
to
That's
Torontonians talking to
Sure.
Toronto, and it must be exactly the same.
I totally agree with you. That's what makes it different too. It's like I can't see this play anywhere else with these people, as opposed to a generic Elf the musical or a generic Legally Blonde that I'm going to see a version of, and it won't. Like, this is our people telling this story by our playwright, and there's something very special about that, I think, for an audience too.
Do you think you feel that way because you are a child of that time of roots of Canadian theatre, of local communities, of actually hearing Indigenous voices?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was part of that whole generation that was like, we looked at our regionals. They were all they did was British and American plays. We wanted to take back the stages. We wanted to create Canadian theatre. I was like a second generation of that, right? And so, yeah, the sad It's funny because, I speak of Jordan Tannehill, but I was at Push in February, and he was a keynote speaker. And of course, he's a very good speaker, and he's very funny. And he's talking about all the boring bourgeois theater and how to blow it all up and stuff. And I'm thinking, is there no sense of history in this country? Like, it sounded exactly like what we were trying to do, only he thought he was the first generation that was trying to do it. It was like, then maybe he was tongue-in-cheek, but I don't think so. I think there's a sense that, and I'm so glad that you're doing this kind of thing, because we have a very short memory. We don't seem to know anything of our own history. And that impulse to take back our stages was exactly what we were doing, what Paul Thomson was doing, The tragedy is that yes, the independents, the devised people are doing great work, and it's touring internationally and it's building our reputation, blah, blah, blah. But we still haven't got our playwrights to anywhere near where they should be. There's still no playwrights that make a living from playwriting apart from Norm Foster. It's 2016. We don't respect the canon. We don't produce the canon. We keep developing new plays, but we have the same problem with getting them redone, getting new productions. And so there's a lot of work that we didn't succeed in, and the regionals are still, in some ways, even like we used to laugh. We used to get really mad because Neptune did Shakespeare and Brecht. Now we'd be really happy if Neptune did Shakespeare and Brecht. Like, that would be like manna from heaven. So what have we achieved, right? Like, somewhere we went off the rails there. I'd die to see a Brecht play at Neptune.